Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." He replied, "What do you wish me to do for you?" They answered him, "Grant that in your glory we may sit, one at your right and the other at your left." Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" They said to him, "We can." Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right or at my left is not mine to give, but is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they became indignant at James and John. And Jesus summoned them and said to them, "You know that those who are recognized as rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones make their authority over them felt. But it shall not be so among you. Rather, whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wishes to be first among you will be the slave of all. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I don't think it's just me, but it seems as though whenever I try to be first, something comes in the way of that. I was at the bank recently and went to make a deposit, and I filled in my deposit slips, and I got turned around, and as I turned around, I noticed that all the lines at the counters, at the tellers, were all filled. So I chose the shortest one. And the other two lines continued to move forward and get taken care of. And the line that I chose, the person at the front of the line had questions and concerns and wanted to speak to the bank manager. And I'm just like, wow, really? So I went to the grocery store. I love the grocery store. I see a lot of parishioners at the grocery store. And while I was at the grocery store, I looked for the line that was the shortest, and also the line where the cashier could process the orders quickly. I don't want to be in the line a long time. I want to get through and get on with my day. So I chose the line, and I got in it, and everything was going along great. And they got down to the last item. She scanned, and she looked at it, and then she reached for the dreaded light. Click, blink, blink. And I was like, oh, no. I don't know what the problem was, but I knew I was in for a wait. I wasn't going to get through this line quickly. And if you've ever gone to Disney World and you stand in line and you go in these lines that serpentine for 1.5 miles before you can get on the ride. But you look to the side and all of a sudden these people are going right through and they're going right on the ride. It's like, hey, what's that? I become indignant like the disciples today in the gospel. I'm like, how come they get to go first? They get the fast pass. I didn't get the fast pass. They got these ways of getting through the line. They don't have to wait like everybody else does. And we see today that James and John go to Jesus, and they want the fast pass. They want the honor, the seats of honor at his side. They want to be elevated and made important in everybody's eyes. And of course, the other disciples aren't very comfortable with that. But more importantly, Jesus points out to them, I don't know if you know what you're asking for. And if you listen to how they pose their question, they say, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." That's pretty open-ended. I kind of use that technique sometimes when I'm calling a friend to ask them to help me at my house. I'm like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Anything? And as soon as they say, no, actually the weekend's... Oh, good, I need some help with my plumbing. I don't let out of the bag before I ask them the question about helping me with my plumbing that I actually want their help. So I kind of trap them. And I think this is what James and John are doing today to Jesus, trying to trap him into things. But when he asked them, what do you want from me? And they tell him they want these seats of prominence. He says, I don't know if you know what you're asking for. And I think in life that happens a lot to us. We don't know what we're asking for. And as we grow in our spiritual maturity, we start learning to ask for the right things. And that is usually in accordance with whatever God wants for us, not what we want for ourselves. In my own life, I know that I always wanted to own my own business. My grandfather owned the business that I owned. My dad owned the business that I owned. And it was going to be my turn. And as soon as I got out of college, I knew everything. So I was ready to own my own business. So why was it taking you so long? And my father said, your time will come. Your time will come. And years went by, and I was running the business, but I didn't own the business. And then my mom got sick, and my dad had to leave the business, and I continued to run it for him in his absence. And after 5 years of sickness, my mom succumbed to a death. And my dad came back to the business and said, you know what? My heart's just not in it. He said, I think it's time that you own the business. And I said, great, it's my chance. But I said, I don't really feel like I did 10 years ago when I really wanted to own the business, but it must be God's will. So I bought the business from my dad, took over. Everything was going great the first year. Our business was named in the top 10 of places to buy tools in Tools magazine. I was like, oh, maybe I can be number one someday. I was really aspiring for that position of honor. And the following year, business wasn't as good, and we had to lay off a couple of people. And then the following year, it got worse, and more people got into the business that we were into, and the internet became popular for people buying the tools that we were selling, and business got worse and worse as years went by. And I remember going to church and sitting before the Lord and saying to him, Lord, I don't know what's going on here, but I submit to your will and want whatever you want. So if you could help me out, I really would appreciate that. And then business got worse, and I had to lay off more employees. And I said, I must have said the prayer wrong or something. Or maybe you didn't understand what I was asking. But God knew what I was asking, and things did get worse, and business had to change, and the model changed. And as it changed, my heart grew softer to the idea that this really wasn't what God had in mind for me overall. He was calling me to something else. He was calling me to the diaconate, a life of service. When we're reading this gospel, the Greek word for service, Christ came to serve, is diakonos. And diakonos is where we get the term deacon. And I was being called to a life of service, which is so much better than the life that I was leading, trying to be number one. So God calls each of us to different forms of service. And I ask for humility in the ways that I try to serve. I always had issues with that, but one of the favorite lines in the litany of humility that I like to pray is that I pray that others may become holier than I, provided that I may become as holy as I should. I want to grow more and more in accordance with God's will. I think that's all God is calling us to do here in today's gospel. There's so many ways that people serve us. They serve us with their music at Mass. They serve us by being in the military and providing safety for our country. They serve us by being first responders in our communities. They serve us by being the political voices that need to be heard in a larger scale. They serve us in so many ways. They serve us as priests who not only do we come to Mass, we're so blessed to come to Mass and hear Jesus speak to us and tell us what he's asking of us or how we can better conform our lives to his, but he also calls priests to a service to be able to take ordinary bread and wine and transform it into his body and blood so that we may share in a very intimate meal. This food that Jesus gives us, his body and blood, it nourishes us, and it gives us the strength to be servers to those who are in more need than we are. So after we get to hear this beautiful word from Jesus of how to conform our lives with God's will, now we get to move into the liturgy of the word where he calls us to serve him with greater zeal, and soon he'll be calling more. Every day he calls more to his service, and children become baptized into the family of God, not to be served, but to serve.